We have never had it this good in the history of FIRS. We are on precisely 1,265 billion. Last year, when we clapped for ourselves for the first quarter, it was 1.175 trillion.
That was Mr. Femi Oluwaniyi speaking at the 2021 retreat of his group, which was held in Abuja between Wednesday the 7th and Saturday the 10th of April 2021. The story of that retreat is the main menu on today's episode of Tax Matters. It promises to be an exciting journey, and I'll be your pilot. Come along! It has been said that the Tax Operations Group is the engine room of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, mainly because the group is directly in charge of all the tax officers spread across the country. We recall that in a previous episode in which we featured the Tax Operations Group as part of our FIRS Unveiled series, we did tell you that the TOG has 10 departments, and so one can easily deduce that it is a large group controlling about 80% of the staff strength of the FIRS. Because of this huge staff strength, the 2021 retreat was held in 2 tranches, whereby a batch of Tax Operations Group staff had their retreat between Wednesday and Thursday, whilst the second batch held theirs on Friday and Saturday. The Executive Chairman FIRS, Mr. Muhammad Nami, was fully in attendance to provide leadership and direction to the retreat participants. Welcoming participants to the retreat, Mr. Oluwaniyi presented the scorecard of the group and by extension that of the entire FIRS in the period January to March 2021. Always ready to stretch itself beyond limits, the FIRS has set for itself a higher target than the federal government has set for it.
We are, of course, mindful that the FIRS target that was given us is now adopted as if it is the government target. We know that macroeconomic indices around is now looking up. We have gotten out of recession, and the forecast for sub-Saharan Africa, for example, is that we have nothing less than 2.2% average growth. Oil price per barrel selling at $60, around $60, much more than the $40 benchmark, is telling us something that very likely government will come back to review the so-called government target up, and we don't want to be caught unawares. So the earlier we took that 7.6 as our target and run with it, the better for every one of us. But I believe that at the end of the day, we will make it, whether it's 5.9 or 7.6 or whatever.
Whereas the government has set a target of 5.9 trillion naira for the service, the FIRS has set for itself a higher target of 7.6 trillion naira. In his remarks, the Executive Chairman FIRS, Mr. Nami, underscored the preeminent position of the Tax Operations Group within FIRS operations.
TOG is critical to the FIRS as it warehouses about 80% of our staff in FIRS. I recognize that these are challenging times, but I'm assured that by our collective strength, teamwork, and support of the board and management, we will achieve success together. We cannot afford to fail government at all levels. As we already know, revenue generated by FIRS represented up to 70% of the total revenue at the FAC last year. This should be some sort of pride to us that we are making substantial contribution to nation building.
Opening formalities over, the retreat proceeded with the presentation of papers by various resource persons. Mr. Thompson Ogbank presented a paper on the review of year 2020 performance of the Tax Operations Group.
We are expecting that by the end of this year, every taxpayer would have bought into the use of Tax Pro Max to ensure that filing and payment of taxes is done electronically.
Given that the TOG is about 80% in terms of size and contribution to the FIRS, I think it would be right to say when TOG sneezes, FIRS catches cold. And when FIRS is cold, Nigeria is in trouble. Because we cannot afford for Nigeria to be in trouble, we must give this our very best. So my presentation is on strategic innovation for optimized revenue performance in a pandemic. And this will not just be, in my view, innovations to apply during a pandemic. It would also be relevant for even after the pandemic. So the first one that I have there is data and tax intelligence. And this is number one on my list deliberately because I see that is where the biggest opportunity sits. Data and tax intelligence. If the taxes we can possibly collect in Nigeria today, if everybody was honest and paying their taxes correctly, if that amount is 50 trillion naira, you know it can be more than 50 trillion. If that amount is 50 trillion naira, at least 90% of that amount you will find by using data and tax intelligence. You know one thing that is common between evasion and avoidance is that both represents deliberate manipulation or planning. Evasion does not happen by accident, it's planned. So when you make sales, the sale is correct when you make the sales. When you now realize the sales is 50 billion, and it will mean that you pay taxes of a certain amount that you don't want to pay, then you take a step to under-declare the revenue, so which means it's planned. When you have data, data has captured the correct one first because it happened. Data is about whatever happened. So whatever we're discussing here now is data because there's a record of it. If you have data, you then confront the person and say, based on the invoices you've sent to your customers, we only just pick your top 20% customers, and it's already more than the one in your financial statement. We need you to reconcile this. That's all you need to say. Number two, develop and implement a robust whistleblowing framework and review tax officers' KPIs to drive desired behavior and limit discretion. Next is fiscalization and simplified technology for filing and payment, devoid of irritations. The next one is naming and shaming of chronic tax evaders. And the other part to this is how about we also name and appreciate consistent, compliant companies. So we don't do only the bad aspect. It could just be something that will be signed by the EC that says we appreciate these leading taxpayers by sector for their consistency in discharging their social and civic obligation in paying their taxes as at when due. Then this one is my cream on the cake. We have to be deliberate in creating a self-auditing system. Imagine we create the tax system to start self-auditing itself. Your work is just to cross-check that it's working. It's like a supervisor. So everybody is doing the work, you just find out, is it still working? A self-auditing system means we have to look at the end-to-end of the entire value chain for tax compliance and find out all the actors and find something in it for them to do the right thing.
Mr. Oyedele's paper was discussed by a team of panelists comprising top FIRS staff and leading lights of the tax and audit consulting fraternity, ably led by the executive chairman, FIRS. The panel session was moderated by Mr. Mike Angle of Anderson Tax.
Mr. Chairman, I want you to please just share with us your plans for FIRS in terms of some of the things that have been mentioned in this presentation. I will just highlight three for you. The first is the issue of capacity building. The other issue I'd like you, Mr. Chairman, to please address is the issue of naming and shaming of tax defaulters. Is this something you are considering?
I think what we have done since we came on board, we have emphasized data, intelligence and analysis. And in the course of our meeting last week with the board, we have a provisional approval for a department to be called Data, Intelligence and Analysis Department. What this department is going to be doing going forward is all of the things that Mr. Taiwo was talking about. Then we also have what is going to be called Emerging Tax Division, which is going to strictly dwell on issues of how do we explore new opportunities, the new areas, e.g. digital currency that we just discussed, raw taxes, the I-24 Interpol money that we're losing as a nation daily, and so on. So we're going to have that, and I'm happy to also to inform our colleagues also that we're going to have Incentive Management Unit 2 as a division as a first step. The essence of this is to ensure that we plug all leakages that are associated with incentives that are given to taxpayers in order for them to remain in business, e.g. the NGOs, the pioneer status, and ensure that the revenue that we are losing as a result of some, we're not saying sharp prices, but as a result of beautiful tax planning by some of them that operate in free trade zones and naturally, instead of producing for export or some other things, they produce for Nigeria territory. So we want to see what do we do to make sure that the leakages in those sectors are blocked and we are able to make more money. Then what we are trying to do is to collaborate with relevant government agencies to improve our collection and to make sure that the Data, Intelligence and Analytics Division works effectively. And on the naming and shaming of taxpayers, we have started that and we are going to be thorough about it. But in the course of doing it, my colleagues, I want to advise, before we name and shame anybody, let's exercise care and skill. Let's make sure that we satisfy all righteousness, follow due process, so that until we are so sure there are no other options than to do that before we go ahead.
Coming back on stage, this time to present his own paper, Mr. Femi Oluwani presented a paper on Tax Operations Group Strategic Direction. There were also syndicate sessions, all aimed at dissecting issues around the theme of the retreat. On day 2, there was another panel discussion, this time on intersection between tax administration and technology. And then the rave of the moment at the FIRS, the rave of the tax administration system, Tax Pro Max. Mr. Mike Adoga is the project manager of Tax Pro Max at the FIRS.
The phase 1 modules are registration, filing and payment, e-services, and reporting. A lot of our taxpayers are registered in CAC, so we use the CAC database as a point of validation. So we are cleaning the web portal data, doing the registration. I'm sure a lot of you here have had sessions with my team members and you know exactly what I'm talking about. As of today, we have 139,054 taxpayers enrolled on the system. For filing and payment, you're aware that we started with one payment gateway, which is Remitter. As at yesterday, we just concluded testing with eTransact. InterSwitch is going to come on board too very soon, so that we give taxpayers options to choose so that they can use any payment gateway of their choice. What are the objectives? The objectives have never changed. It's still to increase taxpayer compliance, increase self-declaration, voluntary compliance, prevent evasion, and then gradually increase in a sustainable way. You heard the acting director of PRS talk about us being in a particular band of collection over the years, despite inflation and all of that. Whatever automation we're having, we're supposed to keep increasing year on year.
London, New York or Lagos, business or holiday, home or office, you can now carry out your tax transactions from anywhere in the world. You can now file all your tax returns, pay online, get a receipt and even process your tax clearance certificate from anywhere in the world online and in real time. All you need to do is log on to www.firs.gov.ng and click on e-services and be introduced to the world of innovation, convenience and transparency from the FIRS. You can also pay stamp duty as you register a new company with the CAC or for other transactions that require stamp duty payment online. You can also file your withholding tax returns and determine the withholding tax deducted from you is in government covers so that you can get your receipt within 45 days as long as the deduction has been remitted. Yes, all of this and more online at www.firs.gov.ng/e-services. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC. Please note that all FIRS services are free of charge. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It pays to pay your tax.
The Tax Operations Group 2021 retreat was held in two-day sessions, especially as social distancing and other COVID-19 protocols had to be observed. And so, what you have seen so far are the proceedings of the first two-day session, which was held from Wednesday the 7th to Thursday the 8th of April. We now move to the second session, which was held with a different set of officers between Friday the 9th and Saturday the 10th of April. Of course, as you will see presently, the Executive Chairman FIRS, the coordinating directors and other top-ranking officials were constant stars at both sessions. Mr. Sadiq Abubakar presented a paper on strategic programs for achieving 2021 targets.
We know the bank, it is mandatory, the law is there, that every month the banks should give us the returns of their new customers. Within this return, you will find information that are very, very useful to us. The bank will always give you the addresses, the names are there, the TIN numbers are there, because no company opens accounts with the bank now without TIN.
Mr. Adeni Orebajo, Director of VAT, spoke on efforts being made to shore up VAT collection using the VAT Auto Collect program.
The government, in its wisdom, said people with a benchmark below 25 million naira revenue should not remit VAT or should not even pay tax at all. But I want to assure you, if you can fully implement the automation, many of the people you think are below 25 million, you will be shocked to see some of them having more than 150 million revenue. I want to assure you that most of our technical partners can remotely connect their equipment with the taxpayers. They don't need to be there physically. And as they connect, it is the staff in the VAT units that will be monitoring on their dashboard the activities, the progress of the companies they have connected to. Let me give you an example of the expectation that will come your way. We connected a lounge on Lagos, on one of the beaches in Victoria Island. This is a drinking lounge. And this is a lounge that remits to the relevant tax office 300,000 naira a month. And we saw a VAT liability of 150,000 naira in one day. And it was not a holiday, it was not a weekend. So assuming that lounge opens 4 days a week, you can imagine the collection for that week is already over 300,000 naira. In fact, the guy said he was going to dismantle the connection. And we told him, dismantle it and you back 3 years jail. So the law has empowered us. We are deploying for now in these areas: maritime, power, that is electricity, entertainment and transport sectors. We are deploying in hotels, restaurants and clubs. We are deploying in branded superstores. These are chains of supermarkets. For example, now, since July last year, we have connected all the 25 stores of ShopRite, and we see their turnover. If you buy anything from ShopRite now, you will notice a QR code, and you notice that there is FIRS in it. Then we have general supermarkets. I don't know about your area. I got to Abuja July 1st last year, and I've noticed over 400 supermarkets in Abuja alone. And I'm sure there will be some that will be paying just 500 naira, 1,000 naira a month. The situation is going to change. It must change, and you are the guys that will change it. We have standard restaurants and eateries, telecommunications. We have 4 big companies, and they contribute disparately. We are trying to communicate with them. But we have over 200 companies in communications. We are going to communicate through NCC. We have MOU with MCC. Once MCC gets, they too, they are automating. So once they get it right, we communicate with them from one point. And whatever comes to any of your offices will be there.
As it happened in the first tranche, syndicate sessions were also held and reports arising therefrom were presented. At the end of it all, a communique was issued, highlights of which include the need for management to develop a framework for developing and implementing innovations, the need to drive the automation and integration of tax administration system across board, and the need for management to deploy a robust feedback mechanism. Management was also enjoined to encourage and reward professionalism and accountability of staff of the tax operations group with a view to improving taxpayers' trust and, by extension, increasing tax compliance through public enlightenment and sensitization through a program of Catch Them Young to be launched at primary and secondary school levels, and the recognition of compliant taxpayers. In an interview with Tax Matters, Mr. Oluwaniyi spoke on the outcome of the retreat and other matters.
My team, they are working very, very hard, and we're very proud of them. It is a collective thing by the grace of God. And beyond TOG again, we have a number of support groups. And if they have not been supporting us very well, the general service group is there, where you have those who take care of human capital needs, the finance, the facilities, and all of that. They are been doing excellently well to facilitate our work. And then, of course, we have other groups, those who are also going after compliance of the taxpayers, and those who do enforcement. So it's the collective effort of all these people that is making us to be able to deliver such good results that we are talking about today.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service has issued a public notice disclaiming the activities of scammers who have been going around impersonating the executive chairman of the service and sending text messages to very important personalities, requesting them to forward details of their candidates to the FIRS for job placement in the service. And in addition to this, defrauding unsuspecting job seekers of their hard-earned money. The service wishes to emphatically dissociate itself from this recruitment scam and is using this disclaimer to serve a very strong warning to those in this job scam and racketeering to desist forthwith or else face the full weight of the law. Read my lips. FIRS is not recruiting. When the time comes, The service will inform the general public through the appropriate channels, and no candidate would be required to pay anything to be employed into the service. Beware of scammers. And finally, let us inform you that the CITN has inducted 285 new members into its fold. The induction ceremony took place on Saturday, the 24th of April. The induction was preceded by a pre-induction orientation program, which was held for 3 days, from Wednesday the 21st to Friday the 23rd of April. The stories of the orientation program and induction will come to you in a subsequent episode of the program. Make it a date with us. Thank you for watching.